Good afternoon, folks. The Snowmobile Parade is sponsored by the Carter Brook Snowmobile Club. Benson is trying to drown me out here. The Carter Brook Snowmobile Club was established in 1973. Its founding members were Father Alphée Marquis, Eddie Billet, Valère Boucher, and Lucien Pelletier. Snowbirds Clubhouse is located near Carter Brook on state property in St. John Plantation. The first established clubhouse was an old logging camp on wheels. The Snowbirds Clubhouse is one of the last remote organized snowmobile structures in northern Maine. This clubhouse has been providing snowmobilers a place to hold activities of leisure throughout the winter. Riders are always welcome to the clubhouse for shelter, rest, and warmth. Also, we'd like to thank Valley Motors for providing the Carter Brook Snowbirds Parade participants a place to set up the start of their parade. There are going to be approximately over or right around or something like 45 antique sleds going down the trail. For those of you who don't know, because I didn't, and so I'm sure I'm not the only one, there used to be in North America, US and Canada, over 257 different brands of snow machine. 257 at one point in time. Now there are basically 4 manufacturers that produce 5 brands, and that is Skidoo, Polaris, Yamaha, and Lynx. And that's what we have. So today, our first participant, if he's going to get back on there and drown me out again, is Benson Willett in a 1996 Indy Light. That's a Polaris Indy Light sled. Our next sled is owned by Russ Boucher. He's got all kinds of... the original owner was Pat Netto and the grandfather of Dean Parrow. Oh no, you're the driver. It's a 1963 Skidoo. Our next sled is ridden by Gary Moore, 1973 Skidoo Elan, and he's got some pretty precious cargo. The next sled is owned by John Michaud. It's a 1987 Skidoo Tundra, and he also has a very precious load. His son and daughter and a spouse. There you go, John. Now we get into some white sleds, which is a 1978 Yamaha SRX. It's owned by Leroy Pelletier of Fort Kent. Back years ago, a Skidoo was yellow, a Polaris was white, a Yamaha was white, and an Arctic was black. Today, there are all kinds of different colors. We have a 75 free air Yamaha GPX, also owned by Leroy Pelletier, and the driver is Vanessa. The thing says Vanessa, but they don't look like no Vanessa. It's Jeff. That's Vanessa on there. The next sled is a 1993 Polaris XLT. It's owned by Will Zandro of St. John. Go ahead, Will. Our next sled is a 1996 Polaris Indy 500, and the owner is, I can't read the handwriting, Mr. Aldrich. Happy birthday, Caroline. How old are you? 4, 5? I'm guessing. Our next sled is a 1993 Yamaha Venture. It's owned by Nathan Levesque of Fort Kent. Our next sled is also from the Levesque family, Dylan Levesque. It's a 92 Yamaha Venture here in Fort Kent. And now we're getting into the work machines. Today's sleds are primarily for recreational purposes, but back in the day, they all had a work purpose. This is a 1988 Skidoo Alpine 2. It's owned by Herb McPherson of Portage Lake. Our next sled is driven by a young man named Jameson Roy. It's a 1974 Yamaha 292 SM. Our next sled is a 1972 Polaris Colt. It's owned by Russ Bushy. I don't know the young man's name who was driving. Our next sled is a 77 Skidoo. It's a TNT Free Air owned by Russ Bushy. And she told me who was the driver, and I've already forgotten. Connor's the driver. Our next machine is sort of a side-by-side machine. It's a 1982 Skidoo Elite. It's owned by Eric Robbins of Fort Kent. Quite different from what we see today. Our next machine is a 1968 Evinrude Skeeter. It's owned by Soya from Montville, Connecticut. Evinrude used to be a manufacturer of Our next sled is a 1971 Rupp Sprint 340, again owned by Peter from Montville, Connecticut. They've traveled 540 miles to participate in this parade. Our next sled, driven by Joyce Netto, is a 1968 Olympic Skidoo. It's owned by Dave Pelletier here in Fort Kent. Our next sled is a 71 Articat Puma 440. Again from the gentleman from, Joe is a driver. He's from Tynmouth, Vermont. And he earned the trophy for the furthest traveled. Our next sled is a 1990 Skidoo Formula. It's owned by that name I can't pronounce again, and the driver is Jerry Dumo from Vermont. Beforehand. Our next sled is 1968 AMF Skedaddler. Kind of a different machine. It's owned by Representative Tim Garrett out of the Caribou area. Our next sled is a 1965 Husky by Ron Willett and Van Buren. If I remember correctly, the Boland's Huskies used to be sold by Freeman's here on Main Street in Fort Kent. Our next sled is a 1985 Yamaha Bravo. It's owned by Lex Guimont of Fort Kent, and it's one of the first machines to break the Can-Am Trail. Our next sled is a 1970 Skidoo Olympic owned by Michael, and I can't read the handwriting, from Berlin, Connecticut. They've traveled 530 miles. Our next sled is a 1965 Husky. It's owned by Cliff Automare here in Fort Kent. It's got a jury-rigged gas tank on there. And we have another Husky. I think we have all the Huskies that were sold here in downtown Fort Kent. And it's owned by Jim Daigle from Madawaska. Our next sled is a Skidoo. It's a 60. next sled is a 1965 Polaris Mountaineer. It's owned by Chris Langell from Washburn. Now, you can see the evolution of snow machines when you look at that one and today's modern sleds. I mean, the motor in the back of that is bigger than some of the sleds we see today. Yeah. Our next sled is a 1965 Arctic Cat 450D owned by Tony Morgan from Burton, New Brunswick.
I know.
And the driver is Mark Boucher. It doesn't say that on here. How am I supposed to know that? Again, look, that guy's got wheels on there, so when you want to cross the road, you just put the wheels down. Probably had to use the wheels to cross the border. Our next sled is a 1993 Skidoo Grand Touring owned by Carol Bell from Prescott. A 1965 Polaris Voyage driven by Mark Bushy. How can Mark Bushy be driving two sleds? Yeah. It's owned by Tony Morgan from Burton, New Brunswick. Our next sled is a 1971 340 TNT Skidoo owned by Dave Pelletier here from Fort Kent. Dave's wife and grandson are on the machine. And we have but two sleds yet left as far as I can see. This one is a 1963 Bombardier Skidoo owned by Dave Pelletier and had received the trophy for the oldest sled. And our final sled, if you can get it started, is the race organizer Russell Bushy, and it's a Columbia 1974 MTD Columbia sled. Folks, that concludes the snowmobile parade. We would like to welcome you all here and thank you for coming. You're welcome to come back next year. Also, if you're interested in viewing this finish of the 30 and 100 mile races for the sled dog competition, that is going to be taking place at Lonesome Pine Trail. So enjoy the rest of your afternoon and thank you.